Hello, loyal fans and subscribers, Ninamori Fanboy here. As you should be aware by now, the Pokemon Battle Federation, aka PBF, Season 2 has concluded. During my last battle, I went on to face the Blackmont Raicougars, aka Scoot, and ended up losing, which meant Scoot went on to the final round. And I will link the battle to that final round. It was a showdown battle. I'll leave the link to it in the description, so if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's pretty nice. And if you haven't seen it, then pause the video and go watch it because I'm going to spoil the ending. So it seems as if Scoot has won again. Last season as the Pittsburgh Steelix, this season as the Blackmont Raicougars. I gotta give major props to Scoot for winning not only this season, but last season, defeating me twice in the same spot both times, in addition to being the one to introduce me to the league. So all around props to you, Scoot, if you're watching this. That being said, since the league is over, I'm just going to, do a brief conclusion video to the season. How I felt about my team, about some of the other teams maybe, just anything I have on my mind before the season comes to an end. Although it has officially ended, this is just my closing video. So if you're watching this and have an interest in this, then that's cool. Okay, where to begin? I guess for starters, I didn't have as good of a record this season as I did last season. There could be multiple contributing factors to this. For example, like competition becoming more fierce. My team wasn't as stacked as it was last season. I mean, it was still stacked this season, I feel, but last season I was pretty overpowered. Just team matchup, too, played a big part, I feel. In addition to, the team being a little different than last season, I felt it was matched up unfavorably against a lot of teams as compared to last season especially. In fact, I planned on listing each member of my roster and going over, its performance, how it did, all that good stuff. So I guess I'll just do that right now. So the PBF kept track of each team's KOs for all their party members as well as, their feints. So all in all, we have a total count for all the KOs all our Pokemon got in addition to feints. I'm not sure if this information was publicized, but I'm going to list how my team performed as well as, my other thoughts that I wanted to say about them. So I'm pretty sure this information is up to date with my final battle, which was my loss against the Raicougars in the Week 2 playoffs. And according to this, my Pokemon with the most knockouts was Mamoswine with 17, who only had 4 feints throughout the season. So all in all, I'm pretty sure Mamoswine was definitely a solid choice on my part. It gave me rocks when I needed it, gave me Ice Shard when I needed it, powerful Earthquake, and knock off an Icicle Crash, or Rock Slide occasionally, Freeze Dry to hit Water Grounds, just a really good Pokemon that I'm definitely proud that I selected for this season. Next on my list of most knockouts would be Talonflame with a total of 15 and 8 feints. So not quite as high of a differential as Mamoswine, but still pretty up there. Which is kind of funny because initially I only drafted Talonflame. Well, not only, but I primarily drafted Talonflame because I knew it would be a solid check to the Mega that I drafted first, which is Mega Medicham, and, having Talonflame would ensure no one else could take Talonflame, and that would eliminate a huge threat to my Mega Medicham. But Talonflame actually did way more work than Medicham, or anyone other than Mamoswine, actually. All I can say is that after evolving from Fletchinder from last season, I'm very proud of how Talonflame has performed this season. And those two have the most knockouts on my team by far. 17 for Mamoswine and 15 for Talonflame. Nothing else has 10. The next highest is 5, shared by both Mega Medicham and Noivern. Mega Medicham having 3 feints and Noivern having 4. So nowhere near as good of a differential as the first two. However, Mega Medicham lacks necessary speed to be a sweeper that can KO a lot of stuff, and Noivern lacks a lot of power. If you give it power, you have to sacrifice the ability to switch up moves. So I can understand why they're lower, but for them to be that much lower, and that's only 3 and 4, I still have 5 through 12 that aren't even as high as 5 when Talonflame and Mamoswine are way up there at 15 and 17. I mean, I get it, because, like, you got my wall breakers, and then Talonflame and Mamoswine can clean up because they have priority and they're strong. But for that much of a gap between them is pretty unreal to me. But like I said, I understand it. And I'll just go over Mega Medicham and Noivern right now. So as you may remember, Mega Medicham was the very first Pokemon I drafted this season, my first pick. And I still stand by the decision, even though his statistics aren't as good as Talonflame and Mamoswine. I still feel he did well, and he's still one of my favorite Pokemon. That being said, however, this season was a bit of a learning experience, and knowing what I know now, I'm not sure I would pick Mega Medicham in upcoming seasons or any other leagues, just because, although it is a good wall breaker, the chances of opponents not bringing an answer for Mega Medicham is really slim. In a lot of my battles, I felt Mega Medicham just wouldn't do well. Like, it would do well against some members, but there's always at least 3 or 4 members on a given team that could either counter it or KO it easily, just come in, outspeed, and KO. And I suppose that comes with the territory of being a wall breaker, and if you build your team around it, it can do exceptionally well. But in a format like this, where you have to draft and opponents can draft the Pokemon that you want to build your team around, I don't think Mega Medicham is an optimal choice. It isn't all bad though. Like I said, he has a ridiculously high attack stat, an incredible wall breaker with a lot of strong moves like high jump kick, Zen headbutt, in addition to a lot of coverage moves like the elemental punches. He got bullet punch, fake out for priority. So I mean, it can alleviate some of what I just said, but I'm not sure if I would pick it again. It's definitely a solid choice, but I don't know if I personally would choose Mega Medicham again. But if you're watching this and really like Mega Medicham, like even more than I do, then definitely go for it. It's not a bad Pokemon by any means, but I just don't know if I would pick it again despite liking it as much as I do. Anyway, on to Noivern. With the high speed stat of Noivern, I really thought it would pull out more KOs than it did, but like I mentioned, his power is lacking, and to boost up the power, you gotta give it either a Choice Specs or Life Orb. Choice Specs being more powerful than the Life Orb, but limiting you, and Life Orb draining your HP, and you're already extremely frail with Noivern. So it's kind of... Noivern is a weird Pokemon. I do like it, I've always liked it, but it's not optimal to use in a format like this, I don't think. It does have a lot of tricks, though. That you can't go wrong with that. Like, options in a league like this and unpredictability are key, and Noivern's got tricks. He's definitely got tricks. Like, in addition to a pretty solid special move pool, the lack of physical viability, though, is another hindrance. So, I mean, if you have the option for another dragon like Latios or Salamence or Dragonite even, maybe consider that instead, because they're used more than Noivern for a reason. But at the end of the day, if you need a dragon, Noivern is a solid option, and I don't regret choosing Noivern at all. In fact, I would probably choose him again in subsequent seasons if I have the option. But I don't know. We'll see what happens once we get there. But overall, Noivern, I give a thumbs up to Noivern. Now we come to a Pokemon with 4 KOs and 3 feints, that being Swampert. I've chosen Swampert the first season, and out of habit I chose him again just because I really like him, and he's pretty viable. I typically use Swampert defensively, which is why his KO number is pretty low. It's higher than his feint ratio, which again, because he's used defensively, and it's good to KO something more than you feint, so Swampert gets a thumbs up for that. The only way I wouldn't recommend Swampert is because random grass attacks. Any special Pokemon can know Hidden Power Grass in this format, and that is terrifying for something like Swampert. I've discovered even if you give Quad Weak things their Weakness Berry, it doesn't always help. I mean, I know Yachi Berries are pretty, well, not standard, but pretty, I guess, expected somewhat on Garchomp. Maybe not anymore, but it used to be a pretty popular choice. So that just kind of let me think that any of those berries would be beneficial on Pokemon like this. But I discovered with Talonflame that it still takes severe damage from rock attacks, and I'm pretty confident that Swampert would still take heavy damage from any kind of grass attack, even with a berry. And if you give it a berry, you're limiting its recovery, which is essential if you're going to use it as a defensive Pokemon, which is probably why you would want to use Swampert in the first place. All in all, it's kind of like Noivern in the regard that it's good, but I almost want to say not in a league like this, but I'll probably choose Swampert again if I have the option, just not even out of habit, just because it is a good Pokemon. You just gotta watch out for them grass moves. Never forget that Giga Drain Crobat. Anyway, next up we got Starmie and Granbull with 3 KOs each. Starmie's got 7 feints though, and Granbull's got 2, so I should have flopped them around, listed Granbull first. But we'll just talk about Starmie right now. I primarily used Starmie as a rapid spinner. I'm not a fan of Defog, just because I like stacking hazards up myself, and I don't want to get rid of them. I want to set them up as soon as possible. Then if I remove hazards, I don't want to remove my own. That's how I look at things. I know Defog is, a lot of people like it more than Rapid Spin, but I prefer Rapid Spin, which is why I have Starmie, which is why I used Starmie primarily as a Rapid Spinner, which is why its KO to feint ratio is so out of skew for such a strong Pokemon. I really just said out of skew, didn't I? Anyway, with that in mind, Starmie had an acceptable ratio here. If I wanted to use Starmie more offensively, I would definitely expect its KOs to be higher, much higher, especially even higher than its feints. But for this case, I'm proud of Starmie. I did what I wanted it to, and I would choose it again. As far as Granbull, the Intimidate, the Immunity to Dragon, and general good physical move pool makes Granbull definitely a solid Pokemon in my mind. I did choose it in the first season, and if given the option, I may choose it again in the third season, because it's definitely a solid choice for the reasons I mentioned. The only thing really bad about it is its speed. His defenses aren't great, but if you give it an Assault Vest combined with Intimidate, it's pretty good defensively, and it's got a pretty good attack stat and a lot of strong physical attacks to hit hard with, so definitely a solid option there. Alright, now we're looking at Quillfish and Carbink, both with 1 knockout each and 4 feints each. Now, I used Carbink as a defensive Pokemon to set up Stealth Rocks to toxic stuff, to be immune to dragon attacks, and general trickiness like that, so I couldn't use it as a wall because it doesn't really have recovery other than leftovers, so I understand why it had so many feints. And I'm surprised it got a knockout, but I'm definitely proud of it that it did. And Quillfish is pretty much in the same boat. I gave it, in most of my battles, I gave it Intimidate Black Sludge, but that didn't really help because it would often come up against special attackers that could OHKO it. But I primarily used it to set up spikes and toxic spikes, maybe taunt some stuff. I think one time I tried to use it offensively and it didn't work out too well, but for what I used it for, Quillfish definitely did its job, I feel, and definitely worthwhile picking again. Same with Carbink. These both did pretty much what I wanted them to do, so thumbs up for both of them. Now, coming up on 2 without any KOs, Mega Steelix and Persian. Mega Steelix didn't have any feints either, and I believe it was only used 1 time, maybe 2, but I think only 1 time, didn't get a knockout or feint, so not much to say there. If I have anything to say about Mega Steelix, I guess I didn't find many opportunities to ever use it. Like, so many of my opponents' teams had straight up counters to it. Like, it's weak to a lot of stuff that's pretty standard in an environment like this, like water, fighting, ground, fire. The only merit to using Mega Steelix is, like, for fairies, I guess, but if someone has a fairy on their team, they're bound to have something to cover that, so I mean, ultimately, I just didn't have a lot of room for Mega Steelix on a lot of my teams. But when I did use it, it didn't feint. I mean, it didn't get a knockout either, so like I said, there's not much to say. But overall, I'm not too satisfied with Mega Steelix, but for what it was worth, I mean, it did help me, I guess, so I can't be disappointed with it, but not sure I would recommend. Now, Persian, though. I wanted to primarily use Persian offensively. Like, it's fast, it gets strong returns and stuff, knockoff, U-turn, switcheroo. for something like this, I expected its knockouts to be a lot higher. Maybe not a lot higher, but more than 0. I can understand the 2 feints, but I really thought Persian would have got more knockouts. I mean, I didn't use it a lot, but when I did use it, it really pulled through. Like, it saved me against Suicune. I had nothing on this team other than to switcheroo at a choice band so it couldn't recover and do Suicune shenanigans. Other than that, though, Persian, it didn't get a knockout, which is kind of disappointing, but I'm not blaming that on Persian, just the fact that, I had a lot more options on my team for stuff that could do more damage than Persian, which allowed stuff to be used other than Persian in a lot of teams. I don't know. I would still recommend Persian again, and Persian is definitely getting a thumbs up for me because, it saved me against Suicune. For that alone, it deserves a thumbs up. So, yeah, there's that. And finally, the last Pokemon, which was not used at all, Magmortar. I just never found a spot where Magmortar could fit. For a fire Pokemon, I always had Talonflame, which always proved to be much more useful. It had a rock weakness, which a lot of my teams usually did, which is why Starmie was essential. But like I mentioned, the fact that he's special fire was unique though, and I planned on using Magmortar if I came up against a team with Mega Sableye, but that never happened this season, surprisingly. So ultimately Magmortar went unused, so I can't say anything about it. And thus concludes my team. Ultimately, I would give everyone a thumbs up, even Magmortar, just because, any little thing helps. Like maybe if someone expected me to bring Magmortar, they could have prepped for it, and then I didn't bring it and I had something else that they didn't prep for. Anything and everything on my team gets a thumbs up because pretty much everything did what I wanted it to do, so I can't say anything really bad about anyone other than, the few complaints that I had, which weren't too significant, honestly, but I stand by everything I said though, so, as far as recommending stuff and not recommending others, I stand by what I said there. But ultimately, I'm proud of this season. It is a bit disheartening to lose in the same spot I lost last time, and it's kind of exciting though to have gone through the last season undefeated until, I lost in the week before the playoff week before the finals. But this week I actually lost 2 or 3 matches before then, so it's definitely getting exciting. It looks like the seasons are becoming more and more competitive as it goes on, so definitely looking forward to Season 3, and perhaps you should as well. I know there's openings for it, so if you're interested in joining, hit up the official PBF. The link to its Twitter is in the description. And with that, I believe I will conclude this video, having said everything that I felt I needed to say. It's been fun, so like I mentioned, look forward to Season 3. Thank you for sticking with me through Season 2 and 1 if you've been sticking around for that long. And have a good day.